Now, it's not really clear that Descartes' second such skeptical hypothesis, the malignant demon one, did the job that he wanted it to do. What was his basic idea? Well, his basic idea was this. Look, there's a good case. That's a case in which reality is as it appears to be. 2 plus 3 really is 5. There is physical extension to things in the world, so on and so forth. Call that the good hypothesis. And then there's a bad case. That's things are not as they appear to be. There's just me and a malignant demon, and the malignant demon is feeding me thoughts. Call that the bad case, the bad hypothesis. Now, his idea was that I can't rule out the bad hypothesis being true. And that's because all of the evidence that I have concerning how things are is consistent with my being in the good case and also consistent with my being in the bad case. And we have to ask ourselves, is that true? In particular, let's focus on this 2 plus 3 is 5 business. Is the evidence that I have concerning the 5-ness of 2 plus 3, is that consistent with my being in the bad case? So Descartes says it is, because in the bad case, just as in the good case, it seems to me that 2 plus 3 is 5. I think that 2 plus 3 is 5. The demon makes me think that. And certainly, if it was true that my evidence for 2 plus 3 being 5 was that I think that 2 plus 3 is 5, or that it seems to me that 2 plus 3 is 5, Descartes would be right. But it's not so obvious that that is my evidence for the 5-ness of 2 plus 3. If I was to try to explain to you why 2 plus 3 was 5, would I say, well, I'm pretty sure 2 plus 3 is 5. You could be sure too. After all, I think that 2 plus 3 is 5. That's why I'm sure. That's my justification for thinking that 2 plus 3 are 5. It's that I think that 2 plus 3 is 5. No, I wouldn't. What I would do is something more demonstrative. I would point at 2 things and 3 things. And I would say, look, 2 and 3 make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I didn't mention me or my thoughts or anything to do with that when I did that little demonstration. I pointed at some things. I pointed at 2 things and 3 things and noted that there were 5 things. So it seems like in saying that we have no evidence that the world is as described by the good hypothesis and not as described by the bad hypothesis, Descartes is supposing that we have no further evidence for the 5-ness of 2 plus 3 other than the fact that we think that 2 plus 3 is 5, or it seems to us that 2 plus 3 is 5. And that's something that can be disputed. I mean, his skepticism might work when it was applied to something, a mathematical claim that was much less obvious, that we appear to gain knowledge of, not through, strictly speaking, understanding it, but through testimony. Take that Fermat's last theorem that we talked about several lectures ago. I believe it's true. I'm very, very confident that it's true, not because I fully understand it, but because people tell me that it's been proven. Of course, in that case, my evidence for the truth of Fermat's last theorem really is other people telling me that it's so. That it seems to those other people that it's so, that they think that it's so. And of course, the malignant demon could be feeding me the impression that other people think that it's so, and so I could well be, so far as I know, in a bad case in which a malignant demon is telling me or having me think that Fermat's last theorem has been proved, although in fact Fermat's last theorem has not been proved. That's fine, but we've yet to get a form of skepticism about more basic mathematical beliefs, a good argument for thinking that we don't know that more basic mathematical facts are true. Can we respond to Descartes' first thought experiment, the one involving a dream, in a similar kind of way? Maybe we can. So let's once again distinguish between 2 hypotheses. The hypothesis that things are as they appear to be, that I Descartes sitting by a warm fire, not dreaming, and call that the good hypothesis. And secondly, the hypothesis that things are not as they seem to be, that I, Descartes, am dreaming in a cold room, and I'm dreaming of sitting by a fire. Do I really know that I'm not dreaming? Do I really know that the second hypothesis is false? Descartes said no, because the evidence that I have is consistent with my being in both kinds of case, with both hypotheses being true. Now you might ask yourself whether that's right. Is it really true that if somebody was to say to you, are you really sure that you're not dreaming? That you couldn't point to some evidence that you'd have in the case where you're not dreaming that you wouldn't have in the case where you are dreaming. That you'd have in the good case and you don't have in the bad case. Certainly the thought that I'm not dreaming isn't going to work, because in both the good case and the bad case you think I'm not dreaming. But maybe there's something else that will work. Descartes anticipates a response of this kind. He says, couldn't somebody say, wait, dreams are indistinct, whereas waking reality is distinct? What was he thinking? He was getting at a thought that seems kind of right to us, which is that, my dreams are kind of like low definition, wonky pictures, it's all rather blurry and very strange, odd things happen. People turn into bubbles. All kinds of very strange things happen. Whereas waking reality just isn't like that. Waking reality is like clear, predictable, sharp in a way that dreams are just not. Dreams are more cartoonish. Waking reality is more like high definition television. So maybe I could say, look, I know I'm not dreaming because everything's in high def. If I was dreaming, everything wouldn't be in high def. Descartes replies to this the following way. He says, yes, but many times when you are dreaming, although it's true that things aren't in high def, that your experiences are not, in his terms, distinct, you think that they are. You think, gosh, I'm having clear and distinct experiences right now, even though of course you're not. And so, again, you can't, from the fact that it seems to you that you're having clear, distinct experiences, you can't rule out your being in the bad case, because in the bad case it does seem to you, as in the good case, that you're having clear and distinct experiences. But of course, you should note that that move only works if your evidence is exhausted by the observation that it seems to you that you're having distinct, clear experiences. One might think that my evidence that I'm dreaming is not that it seems to me, that I'm not dreaming, is not that it seems to me that I'm having clear and distinct experiences. It's that I'm having clear and distinct experiences. It's the distinctness of the experiences that tells me that I'm dreaming. Not dreaming. Attend to yourself right now. Honestly, do you think that you're dreaming? Do you think it's even possible that you might be dreaming? No, you don't. And you don't because reality is just too discriminate. Things are too clear. The phenomenology of dreams, what it feels like to be in a dream, is not like this. So you have evidence that goes beyond your thinking that you're not dreaming. You're thinking that you're having awake type experiences. Okay. So are we done? Not necessarily. Modern people who've wanted to try to wring the best out of Descartes' reasoning have pointed out that we can seem to get round worries like this by pointing to a slightly different kind of thought experiment, one that does really everything that Descartes' dreaming thought experiment was designed to do. And that involves brains in vats. It will be familiar to you if you've watched sci-fi movies of really almost any kind over the past 30 years. basic idea. Here's the skeptical hypothesis. I think that I'm sitting by a warm fire. Skeptical hypothesis. I think I'm sitting by a warm fire because I am a bodiless brain in a vat. So I'm just a brain floating in a sort of gooey vat full of liquid. And I'm being fed perceptual experiences just like those of someone sitting by a warm fire. How is the brain in the vat, in the bad case, having experiences just like the real person sitting by the fire in the good case? Well, look, whenever the person sitting by the fire receives a perceptual input, electrical signals passing down nerves, stimulate areas of that person's brain, then an input of a very similar kind is received by the brain in the vat. How it works for the person sitting by the fire is that light from the fire travels into the person's eye, then it's encoded electrical signals at the retina, which those signals then pass through the optic nerve, stimulate the person's brain. The brain in the vat, there's no fire, there's no eye, there's no optic nerve, but there are wires attached to the brain in the vat, and those same signals, in exactly the same order, just the same kinds of things, stimulate just the same areas of the brain in the vat's brain. And whenever that kind of stimulation occurs, in the good case, it occurs in the bad case. So the brain in the vat is having all the same experiences that the person is. So every experience had by you sitting by the fire in the good case is had by the brain in the vat in the bad case. After all, if you look at the brain of the person sitting by the fire in the good case and compare it to the brain of the brain in the vat in the bad case, it's just the same. Everything that goes on in the one brain goes on in the other brain. And since the nature of experience only depends on what's going on in the brain of the relevant thing, the experiences are just the same. That's the idea. What does it mean? It means that with respect to this new skeptical hypothesis, we can't get out of it, we can't rule it out by pointing to aspects of our experience. We can't say, oh look, clearly we're not in the bad case because look at the vividness, look at the high def nature of everything. Look at how clear everything is. Look at the fact that things aren't turning into bubbles and the like. We can't say that because we're having just as clear high-def experiences, or the brain in the vat is having just as clear high-def experiences in the bad case. So this second version of Descartes' first skeptical hypothesis seems to pose a serious challenge. Residual challenge. A challenge remains for the idea that we know even mundane, obvious things like that we're sitting by a fire. So we'll now try to look in the next few clips about how to reply to this argument. And there have been various replies that philosophers have suggested, some of which are more powerful than others.